Hello, my name is Phil Kim, and I'm an associate professor at Babson College. And I'm very pleased to discuss my research that's been published in the Journal of Business Venturing recently. I've been studying how entrepreneurs get their businesses up and running for the last decade. And one thing that has puzzled me off and on in my inquiries is the fact that some entrepreneurs just take a little longer to start. And the conventional wisdom is that when these entrepreneurs start slower than others, there must be something wrong with their ideas or their abilities, and the likelihood of these businesses succeeding in the long run is questioned. And so we know this in the popular press or on TV when we watch Shark Tank and the spotlight is on the entrepreneur. Questions come up whether or not these entrepreneurs are actually in it for the long run. And so as I started to pursue this question, I realized that there are about 1 in 4 entrepreneurs here in the US who have businesses that have some origins in their hobbies or leisure activities. So that made me even more curious about whether those who start businesses based on their hobbies have any significant differences in how they start their businesses and the consequences in the long run and the outcomes of their businesses, whether they succeed relative to other kinds of entrepreneurs who have different motivations for starting their businesses. And so what really captivated me as I continued this inquiry is the idea of serious leisure. And this is a term coined by a sociologist named Robert Stebbins. And in his studies of people who really enjoy hobbies, he's learned that there are people who devote a great amount of time to their avocations, and they spend a lot of energy and financial resources to hone their crafts, and they also join together in communities of other enthusiasts about their hobbies and activities. And I realized that that could be a potential source not only for ideas that could turn into new ventures, but also gives them a platform, an opportunity to conduct early market research, to build prototypes, to enroll initial customers, and to test out the viability of their products. And so as I continued my research, I realized there are some very interesting differences between those who start businesses out of their hobbies and then those who are starting for other reasons. I think it's quite amusing to watch shows like the Shark Tank, and you have investors, celebrity investors like Kevin O'Leary, who make a point that some of the people who come on the show who are taking a really long time to get their businesses up and running are simply hobby businesses, and they don't amount to businesses that are worthy of investment, at least on the Shark Tank. And what I'm curious is whether or not that's a good indicator of success, whether rate of progress of starting a business actually is indicative of how successful a business might be in the long run. So let me tell you a little bit about how I conducted my study. I used a publicly available data set called the Panel Study of Entrepreneurial Dynamics, PSED2. And this was a panel study collected from 2005 to 2010 of individuals in the U.S., of the adult working population, who were in the early stages of starting a business. And this is a random population, a random sample of nascent entrepreneurs in the U.S. And so this allowed me to conduct a large sample quantitative analysis looking at people who have a hobby background, an idea that's connected to their hobbies or leisurely interests, and to compare those entrepreneurs with others who are starting for different reasons. And when I analyzed the data, I was interested in a couple outcomes. Number one, the rate of progress as measured by the number of startup milestones that these entrepreneurs achieved in the process of starting their businesses, whether or not they achieved early sales or hit early profitability, and if they made a major commitment, a focus in their work to pursue this venture in the next 12 months. So I'd like to share a few highlights of my investigation. Number one, as expected, those who started businesses from their hobbies did so at a slower rate compared to those who are starting businesses for other reasons. However, that difference was mainly noticeable in the first 4 years of the startup timeframe. If the businesses were compared after 4 years, the rate of progress was very similar, meaning that the tortoise actually caught up to the hare. In terms of the other outcomes, the businesses started by those with a hobby background, a hobby connection, were more likely to achieve early sales and to be profitable at their earliest stages. And those entrepreneurs were also more likely to be committed to their nascent ventures and make that a major part of their work focus for the next year. So let me say a few words about the implications of this study and the findings of my work. First of all, as the results show, that those who are starting businesses from their leisure interests or their hobbies can certainly succeed in the long run if we look at commonly accepted milestones for success, profitability and early sales. And that would encourage those who are looking for ideas. If they've wanted to be an entrepreneur, but they ask themselves, well, what exactly should I pursue in a venture? Or you're held back because you don't have the right idea in place, look to something that you enjoy doing as a hobby. A question that I like to ask my students is, think back to when you were a child. What are some activities that made you happy and brought you joy? And see if you're able to use that kind of inspiration to develop an idea that is worth pursuing as a new venture. And then secondly, I think it's important not to simply discount those who take a little longer to get up and running. Certainly if you're a professional investor or looking for outside investment money, you have specific rules that you'll need to abide by. But if you are not constrained by those kinds of situations, then it is perfectly acceptable to take a little extra time, especially if you're doing something that you enjoy. And there's nothing necessarily wrong about getting up and running if it takes you to get up and running a little longer than it does others that you might hear about in the popular press or who are much more successful in terms of size and stature. It's okay to be a tortoise. And in fact, if you are on the fence and you are working full-time in a job and you've always had that niggle in the back of your mind of whether or not you want to take the plunge, perhaps you can use your hobbies as a stepping stone. Do something that you enjoy and see if there is a connection to an entrepreneurial idea that you can exploit, and then take small steps to nurture that idea to the point where if it does become successful and you still enjoy your hobby at the same time, you may be in a position to have the best of both worlds. This is joint work with two other colleagues, Kyle Longest, who is a professor at Furman University in South Carolina, and Steve Lippmann, who is a professor at Miami University in Ohio.